Hey again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and I want to take you on another field trip. This one we're going to the Clearview Garden Shop. This is the retail end of that Clematis grower I took you through on a tour of 3 or 4 weeks ago. So as we walk through the front doors here, let me reintroduce you to Rob Wein for the tour.
This is our retail area, and before I forget, I really enjoyed the tour you did last time with me, and I was actually blown away with the responses that you got. You've got just such a wonderful following, very, very interesting group. Just reading their responses, it was great. And one thing that I neglected to answer or mention last time was that this is definitely a family operation, and I've got a brother in it, my mom's still in it, and I've got 2 sons in it and a nephew, Wes, Robbie, and Dusty. And everybody has a very important role to play. It's a real team effort to make things happen. Not to mention we have a fantastic staff as well.
That's always great to hear.
Yeah,
family-run business.
Yeah,
and being successful over a number of generations.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it was my grandfather and father. They actually started it back in 1970, so it's been going a long time, and now grandkids and great-grandkids are in it.
Oh, that's
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's have a look at the place.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, got lots of interesting items in here, and the thing with garden centers is, you know, we're primarily wholesale, but there is fantastic garden centers here in BC, right across Canada and right across the US. So, you know, I think it's cool with garden centers because people that start garden centers start because they're interested in plants. And that's where it always seems to go from. So it doesn't matter what garden center you go into, you're going to have people that are very well informed and really passionate about what they're doing. So we're really proud of what we've got going on here. But like I said, there's lots of great garden centers that are going to be right in your area. So don't worry too much about necessarily making it out to Clearview Garden Shop. If you do, we'd love to see you. But
well,
you know,
that's very humble of you to say.
Well, it's very truthful.
Interested to know though, you were and have been for a long time a very successful wholesaler. What was that conversation like in the family when you had to make the decision about whether going retail was worth it for you guys?
Well, that's a great question. And you know what? We, as wholesalers, we tend to think we really know what people want, but the truth is we don't. So the retail it enables us to trial different things and really learn what the consumers want.
Right.
So it started small, and it was primarily just clematis and only things that we grew for wholesale. And it was like that for a number of years. And we just learned a ton of stuff about what customers like. You know, what geranium varieties they like, what clematis varieties they like, what vines are popular. You know,
even what color's hot this year.
What color's hot this year? Yeah. And for many years, we thought that we knew what consumers wanted. So we were always recommending to garden centers what they should be taking. But now we really do have a good idea of what people want, and it's because of our retail.
And that's great, because I'm looking around here and I'm seeing that you've got plants here that obviously you have grown.
Yes.
But then you also have plants from partners, other wholesale growers.
That's correct.
So you're actually creating some opportunities, I'm not going to say for your competition, but for partners within the industry for sure.
And that's fantastic. You know, we're not out to really compete against everybody. We'd much rather work with everybody. There's lots of demand for plants out there, and we're certainly not the only game in town. But, you know, it's nice to have a few other things when people do come in here. So we try to carry a good selection of trees and shrubs, and, you know, not as good as many of the other nurseries, but we've got some cool stuff and some real bread and butter stuff. But we focus mostly on the stuff that we grow, and we've learned a tremendous amount by doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like those Salicyna begonias up there are a great example. They've become so popular in the last 7 or 8 years, and there's still not enough people growing them, in my opinion. They do so well in the garden. Wow. And I've seen these things hung out in full sun, and people walk up and say, "Oh my God, you can't put that there, it's going to burn, it's a begonia." Well, on the West Coast for sure, Salicyna begonias do fantastic in full sun, and they'll just bloom right through the summer.
And very full.
Very full, yeah.
Nice habit.
Yeah, they get even bigger than this too. Wow. They get hard to ship when they get so big, so it's good if they go.
So it's kind of nice if you have your own garden center.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think when someone's planting a garden, you always start with trees and shrubs, so that you've got there's a standard there, but so you've got a background of something that gives your garden shape and some color and texture throughout the whole year, and then you fill in with perennials. So you don't necessarily have to replant them every year, but it's nice to have some perennials in. And then you go to the annuals that are just going to give you a real bang. They're the wow in your garden. And the advantage with annuals, of course, is they bloom so long. Right. And you have to plant them every year, yeah, but they bloom so long. And there's some really cool annuals. This one here, this is actually a Garvinia Gerber. And on the west coast here, it's like a zone 7B. So on the west coast here, it'll often survive. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, in Canada, we're typically looking at Gerbers as complete annuals, throwaways,
100%.
Right? But here on the west coast, you might get away with these.
Especially with the Garvinias, yeah, quite often they'll overwinter, which is pretty cool. And they bloom so long. Yeah, so we do a fair number of house plants and just unique stuff, succulents, and there's a few hardy cactus there.
Love the displays here. You've really done a nice job of dressing up the inside of your garden center here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Monica and Deb, I think we'll have to give the credit to that. They're both artistic, and actually the rest of the staff for that matter. I shouldn't just give it to Monica and Deb, but yeah, they're very creative. They've done a great job of making everything look pretty.
Now, I know we're coming up on the Clematis here now,
yeah.
But I had a question about the growing environment in here. Because I noticed that when we went to your wholesale facilities and your growing facilities, that some of those houses were pretty warm.
Yes.
Here, it feels a little bit cooler, and I can see that the roof is cracked there.
Yeah.
I would imagine, is that because these are finished plants and you're just trying to hold them at this point?
That's right, yeah. A, we're trying to hold them, and B, we want them to be ready for the consumer's garden when they take it home.
Right.
So, if we're growing at, 22 degrees in here, which might be really comfortable for people walking around, and the plants might thrive, if someone takes that home and the night drops down to, 5 degrees, depending on the type of plant, it can be really hard on it. So we try to keep it as cool as we can in here within reason.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, now we are coming up on the Clematis, and of course this is going to be the highlight for a lot of people to see just how big are some of these flowers and what a wide assortment of Clematis you have here.
Yeah, we do have a lot of varieties in here. Yeah, so there's kind of something for everybody, I think. There is so much fantastic genetics and variation between varieties of Clematis. I mean, you can have anything from like a small bell shape to like a 2-inch bloom, where you get Montana, where you might get thousands of blooms and it'll go up a 30-foot cedar tree, or you can just have something that's sitting on a trellis and stays small. So right. they can go in containers, they can go in the ground, they can go up trees. If you're going to go up trees, good idea to plant away from the root line and work it over there so it doesn't have to compete with the tree.
Right.
But we've got a container over here actually that's interesting. And my son Robbie actually put this together, and he likes to use driftwood. So there's just so many different things you can do if you're a little bit artistic and just want to have some fun with it.
For sure. Wow, what a nice deep color on this guy here.
Yeah, that's a beauty. Yeah. That's Niobe.
Yeah.
And just a gorgeous plant. Stays quite small. There's another one in that color range called Westerplatte that is also beautiful. I think it blooms a little bit longer than Niobe. So they've all got their nuances and advantages and disadvantages, but it's hard to beat that color, especially with that bright gold stamen.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now I noticed you've got some good signage over here. I'm just going to skip over by a couple of aisles here.
Sure.
And you've got some good signage here about the pruning groups of Clematis. I'm just going to pan up to that so that the viewers can see. I mean, it's important to have good signage and good instructions for your customers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it can be intimidating, right?
It can be intimidating, and I think the thing you have to remember with clematis is even if you prune it incorrectly, you're not going to kill it. All you're going to do is have an effect on the way it blooms. I mean, if you cut a clematis right back to the ground and don't leave any leaves, and it's the wrong variety, you could potentially kill it. But like any plant for that matter. But just an incorrect pruning is not going to kill a clematis. It's just going to affect the way they bloom. And some people get really confused over clematis, but you really don't need to. It's actually relatively simple. You know, so like you can see there, we've got 3 groups up there, A's, B's, and C's. But it's really just early spring bloomers, mid-spring bloomers, and summer bloomers.
Right.
And if you want to just go with a rule of thumb, if the plant starts to bloom before June, you don't need to prune it.
Okay.
And that's because it's blooming on the previous season's growth.
Right.
So the ones that bloom late in the year, like your group C's, your summer bloomers, those ones you do want to prune. You want to cut them back hard each year. Again, if you don't prune it, not a big deal. All that's going to happen is it's going to bloom up higher each year.
Right.
And you know, you drive down the road sometime, you see somebody's clematis, it's on a trellis or something, or up the side of the house, you can see all the blooms way up top. That's a group C that didn't get pruned hard.
Right.
Still completely healthy, and maybe they've got a window up there and they like looking at those blooms.
Yeah, worst case scenario doesn't sound too bad to me.
No, it's not that bad. They just didn't maybe prune it optimally. So no need to anybody to be worried about wrong pruning. So the group A's and B's, really no pruning necessary, or let's say pruning optional. Group C's, best to prune them hard. Unlike some genus like say a wisteria, a clematis won't choke out a tree.
Right.
Yeah, and they won't destroy a trellis or grow through your eaves.
Right.
They tend to just take their leaf petiole, and when they wrap around the host like that, and that's how they attach themselves.
Okay, so no pads or no...
That's right, no pads, no suckers. So they're really non-invasive. And there's even some shrubby types like this here. Like this is new love. It's a heracleifolia. So that's going to grow more like a bush. You wouldn't actually even have to stake that if you didn't want to.
You'd almost treat that like a perennial in some ways.
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. And yeah, a lot of the varieties, you know, they'll ramble through shrubs, or they can even be used as a ground cover. You know, you just don't want them to lay on the ground and get really wet, but if they've got something to ramble over, they'll do great as a ground cover. And some will do great just as a straight ground cover.
And you got some of your other vining plants here as well?
Yeah. I mean, the other vines have continued to grow in popularity along with the clematis. And there's just so many options. Like, I mean, the climbing roses are great. We stick mostly to climbers. We're looking at some Passionflower here. There's some new series out of England that, like, we've got that Star of Cervertin there, and Betty Miles Young. They're just really, really cool colors and really good bloomers. We got the Cerealia here, which is the hardiest one. It's like a zone 7B, so if you got it in a really well protected spot here, it's going to survive. But it's even worth planting just as an annual. They all are.
And the other ones, if you wanted to have them in our climate, it's either kiss them goodbye at the end of the season or bring them in, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're worth it as an annual. They really are, because they just put on such a great show. Yeah, lots of, and different sizes too. You don't necessarily have to start with something huge. Like that's a 2.5-inch pot, and it's going to take a year to get from that size to that size. And a little bit better price point, but you know, you can do a lot for not spending too much, and as long as you're patient, you're going to get a fantastic show out of them.
And you have a kind of a clematis encyclopedia reference book mounted right here, so you can have a look at the different varieties.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
And we're ready to get a new edition done on that. We actually ran 15,000 copies of that, I think, about 3 years ago, and we're out. So we got to do a new edition anyway, because there's so many new varieties, and we want to get it updated. So we'll be doing that in the next year or two. It's a lot of work to put it together, but it's worth it. So we got planting and pruning information, and then just pictures and information on a couple hundred different varieties. So one thing that I really want to show people is many growers do what we do with their stakes, and they actually staple it to the pot. And you know, people wonder why we do that, because they think it makes it hard to plant. Well, the reason that we do it is sometimes people will come in and they'll pick the plant up by the stake. So if it's not stapled, it wrecks the plant.
Right.
And then when the plants are going to market, if they're not stapled, they have a tendency for the stakes to go back and forth, which can be A, hard on the plant, and B, they just don't look good in retail.
Right.
So about 15 years ago, we started stapling, and there's a lot of growers that do this now. And the only thing you need to know when you're planting is you just basically take the stake, put it away from you, and simply just push on it.
Okay.
And it comes off easy, and then the whole thing comes out, just as if it was never stapled. And it comes out in one piece.
There you go.
And if you don't detach that staple from the pot, it can be very problematic and a real pain. So we have put signs on the pots before to detach the stakes, but people just didn't see them anyway.
Right.
And when we first started doing it, we got quite a few comments that people didn't like it, but it's been so many years now, a lot of people are used to it, and we don't seem to get very many of those comments anymore, but just wanted to take the opportunity to mention that.
And from what I've seen, that's pretty much the industry standard now.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, fair to say. We're actually working on a clip to get it even better, but it's hard to get that thing perfected. We seem to get close, but can't get it quite right.
How many square feet are we in here?
This and the areas where the till and the hard goods are is 25,000 square feet. So it's lots of room for indoor shopping. And the stock turns over in here pretty quick. So, if you're coming in once a week, you're bound to see new stuff every time you come in.
Sure, and you have a small outdoor area as well.
We do have a small outdoor area. Yeah, we're talking about expanding the outdoor area and taking up some more room outside, but we've got a small outdoor area that's full of shrubs. Lavenders just always continue to be very popular. These are the English ones here. Well, these ones here are the English ones. They're the ones I prefer in the garden personally, just because they're so reliable. They're super hardy. They work really well as a dried flower. Mind you, the Spanish will too. The Spanish are beautiful, and you see even more of them in retail because it's easier to get them in bloom in the spring. Yeah. So there's more of an impulse item, but they're good too, especially if you have the right spot for them, but they're definitely more tender than the English ones.
I'll add a note is some people have asked me which is the best lavender for flavor, because people are using these for culinary purposes. And I talked to the lady from Tuscan Farm Gardens, and she said, the better it smells, the better it tastes.
Well, there you go.
English lavender probably wins on that one too.
Yeah, that's true.
You've done some, obviously you're plant people, right? So the first focus was plants, but then you've added hard goods, cut flowers. It's some of those extras that just make it, I guess I'm going to say, a more seasonally, less seasonally dependent business,
Yeah, although, we don't stay open year round.
Okay.
No, we do it from early March until kind of midsummer.
Okay.
And we may go year round at some point, but right now, like I say, the wholesale is the backbone of our business.
Right.
And we can kind of achieve the goals that we want to achieve being open seasonally.
Nice.
But we've got some great people in the garden shop that really just love it. So I think there's a few people that would really like to take it year round.
Yep.
So it could happen, but
right. There are some nurseries, I have to say, that have done the seasonal thing for many, many years. If you go to Minter, though, one thing I will say is they work hard to keep it fresh all year. Yeah. I think that's the biggest trick, is that they have to make plant displays and other displays that make it worth visiting at all times of year.
Yeah, and don't they do a fantastic job? Oh. But you talk about passion, I just have so much respect for Brian Minter and the things that he's done for the industry. And like I was saying earlier, you go into almost any garden center and you're going to get passion. People start a garden center because they're interested in plants. Whereas people might start a different business like a lumber yard, not because they're interested in lumber, but because they are into building or whatever. But with garden centers, it's almost always people that are passionate about plants, and Brian Minter is the perfect example. And he just keeps on coming up with new ideas, and so knowledgeable, great displays, great combinations. Yeah.
So sounds like I better take a trip out there for.
You should. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of other great nurseries in the valley too, but. This is actually an interesting plant here. These are Alstroemeria, and I wish they were in bloom right now. But these are a really popular cut flower, as you may know, because they stand up so well in the vase.
Right, but they've started breeding some of them for the garden here.
That's right, and they're another, let's say tender perennial. Like they're about a zone 7, so often they will survive here in the valley, and they bloom right through the summer, right into fall as soon as they start blooming.
And I'll throw some pictures in, but super bright colors.
Yeah, the colors are fantastic. Like I said, I wish they were in bloom. You can see from the tags, but they normally size up really well and just put on a fantastic show. And there's different genetics. Like you can see over there, that's obviously a taller series. This one's more compact, and you know, you may be going to get a little bit better show closer to the ground, but if you want to get some height in your garden, then that series is great. That's an interesting geranium right there, the Vancouver Centennial. We call that a fancy leaf geranium. It's been around for a while, and it doesn't have the big double blooms that a lot of the zonal geraniums do, but it has lots of flowers, and the foliage is just so interesting.
Yeah, even that color of the foliage just on its own.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a bright color too. So, osteos, you know, that's a great early season plant.
Yeah, they like it cool.
They like it cool. And that's a good example of how genetics have improved. Because at one time, osteos were, okay, put them out in March, get them out of there in May because they're kind of done. But a lot of the varieties now, they'll bloom right through the summer. Ivy geraniums. I don't know if many of your audience have been to Europe, but these are so popular in Europe, like all over, like Eastern Europe, Western Europe. They're used a lot in window boxes, outside restaurants and houses, and if I'm talking to somebody on the phone and I say, have you tried, you know, mini cascades? They'll say, oh, that's the single flowered ones. No, my customers, they don't like single flowers, they like double flowers. But then you see, if you can see a mini cascade in a basket or in a planter box that's got like thousands of flowers on it, it's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. Right. So we've got some customers that call every year, they have to get their minis. And there's other customers say, would you like some mini? No thanks, our customers don't like geraniums with single flowers.
Well, maybe they don't know what their customers will like.
Yeah, so it's a bit of an education thing. So these are regals, and the same family as the geranium. Regals have different names. Martha Washington geranium is probably how they're best known, or just simply pelargonium. But you can see the colors are just really super interesting.
Yeah, that is splashy.
Yeah. So they're really popular. Not quite as easy to grow as a geranium, and that's why in storage you'll typically find them at a higher price point. They're a longer crop to finish. They're a little bit trickier, but the colors are gorgeous. And then we got some just typical bedding here, like marigolds, just a staple. Real workhorse in the garden because they just stand up so well. They're easy to grow, put on a great show. Some of the colors are great.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking us around today. It looks like we've seen the majority of what you have here, but I bet you I'm going to put my camera in the car and come back and pick through in more detail.
No, that sounds good. That sounds good. I don't want to bore you guys with too much stuff, and I know there's only so much time, but yeah, there's a lot more here. to see, but we'll have to do that on another occasion.
Right on. Thanks so much, Rob.
My pleasure. Thanks for taking the time.
All right, that's it for the tour, and I just want to finish off by once again thanking the whole crew down at Clearview for their generosity and even patience of having me walk around their garden center with the camera. I want to put one final note in here is I got a chance while I was down there to meet up with Wein, this is Rob's son, who implemented the integrated pest management or biological control programs in their growing operations. I'm going to have a quick interview with him in the next week or so be on the lookout for that.